Today's guest is Todd Heath, a leader who has walked an extraordinary path from social work to technology executive, and who never lost sight of the most critical element people. With a background in strategic leadership, high performing teams, and transformational change management, Todd shares hard won insights on what it truly means to lead, not by authority, but by influence, empathy, and trust. In today's episode, we dive into the difference between leadership and management, the vital shift from doing to empowering, and how AI will reshape the workforce by automating tasks while making human connection even more valuable. Get ready for a conversation that challenges old models and paints a compelling picture of the future of work. All right. Welcome to the Human Code. I'm here with Todd Heath. Todd has an excellent background in leadership and really excited for him to join us here today. Todd, thank you again. First question for you, though. What got you interested in the intersection of humanity and technology?
Yeah, for me, it's been a weird journey. I actually started out my career in social work, of all things, and obviously all about people. Unfortunately, the position that I had, the grant that funded it, fell through 3 weeks before my wedding, and so I was unemployed for my wedding, which is it's a nice way of saying that you meet some of your in-laws and they say, "Oh, what do you do?" And your answer is nothing. I'm going to mooch off of your niece for the next few months till I find out what I'm going to do. And I want something more stable. And I went into technology. Um, but there's always been that background of people. Um, and then as I've sort of moved through the technology ranks, and especially as I moved into product development, it is really all about understanding people and understanding their objectives. I've been in the consulting realm. It's really not about the technology, it's about the problems that we're solving and really alleviating the pain for them or delivering value. So for me, what I've been able to find in that transition is that, frankly, everything that we do is about people. And they're at the center of it. And if we do that, all the technology really wraps around that well to support it, but it should be supporting people, not the main focus.
I love that you were at your wedding unemployed. That is
Yeah, it was interesting.
that is the true epitome of like a strong relationship to kind of like sit there and like what a place of like love to know that like you're going into it from that space. But then additionally, like bringing your social work into the technology space and recognizing that it has played a strong role in your development and like your career progression has been very steady, at least from what I've seen on your LinkedIn as well. What are some of the qualities of leadership that you've developed over the years?
I think some of the biggest qualities are really around the fact that as a leader, you hear things like servant leadership, which is great. It's a nice little buzzword. But the higher you go in leadership, what I've found is that the less people actually care about what you do. You start getting rated and evaluated only off of the results. Um, but you're not, the more people you have under the more you're not actually directly contributing to those results. So suddenly now to get the results that you're going to be rated against, that you're going to be weighted, that your success is dependent on, it depends almost entirely on other people. And so really being in that position of making sure that they have what they need to be successful, that they have a good environment to be able to do that in. That for me has been that journey around leadership to move from what I'm doing, what I'm focused on, what I think we should do, even when those things are right, to empowering other people to achieve results. Because by and large, like people want to do the right thing. They want to be successful. They want to contribute. When they don't, we have easy ways of solving that. You just exit them. But that's the 1%. I would say it's not even 1%. Most times people want to do the right thing. And if you just give them context and help them, they will go ahead and do that. Um, but that's harder than just barking orders to people and expecting them to follow it. And I find that I've had to learn how to do that over my career and do that well, because it doesn't always come naturally. especially when you first start out in those leadership roles, because a lot of times we move into leadership from having been successful as an individual. But what makes you successful as an individual and being able to stay on top of things is not what makes you successful when you're leading other people. And so if you rely on those same tools, you tend to irritate the people around you. And you have to get a different paradigm and mindset to really be successful. So that's been that biggest journey over the course of my career, is really getting into that mindset to realize it's not about me. It's really about them. And then really digging into focusing on the people around me and how do I make them successful. And ultimately, that is what has led to that career growth. That's what's led to the results that people see. But the thing that I'm excited about, going back to that intersection of people and technology, it's the thing that's been valuable to people around me, and that has been meaningful to them. Um, and that's why I wanted to be in a leadership role in terms of, leading people and teams. Is that ability to impact people's lives positively while we're trying to accomplish something that is meaningful as well. And that's been pretty exciting.
It's interesting. I've talked to a number of leaders that both here and also in other spaces, and that's one of those things that seems to come across consistently is like the care for the people that they are leading, because it is a loyalty is a two-way street in that regard. And so, like, if you are loyal to them and their growth and their development and their experience and what they want to see as their vision, that comes back in spades for everybody else as well.
Yeah, I had for a period of time, I about 9 years, I was teaching classes at Penn State, and one of those classes I was teaching in the continuing ed department, and I taught emerging leadership and professional development course. And so companies would send their emerging leaders or their new leaders to it. And it was really amazing to me as they got in there over and over again. Three-quarters of the classroom was struggling with getting people to do things. They were struggling with, all these things. And yet when I asked them how they were, like, oh, I'm great. Like, it's the team around me that's the problem. Uh, and I would introduce them to these studies that came out, which basically said, hey, as a leader, if you think you're a good communicator, you may rate yourself at a 10, people around you rate you at an 8. And you think you're encouraging, you're like, oh, I give myself an 8. And they give you a 6 or a 5. And every single dynamic of leadership, we rated ourselves higher and the people around us rated us lower. And we've wrapped this persona around us as leaders of our intentions, and yet everybody's different, and people rate us off of how it feels. And yeah, that's been a real learning point and challenge for me. Is yeah, you get people around you, and all of a sudden your intentions don't matter as much, and if you aren't really intrinsically focused on them, and you aren't asking them questions, and you aren't dealing from the aspect of relationship and caring from them, that gap is always going to come further. And you'll just tell yourself you're doing an amazing job and wonder why the people around you are frustrated. And what I have found is even the leaders around me or the leaders I have to develop, it oftentimes starts out with they conversations. Like, they don't know what they're doing. They're getting in the way. They're slowing things down. They're a bunch of idiots. And by and large, that ends up being misplaced frustration, because the issue is us. Like, it's me saying I have these intentions and I see a path, and those might absolutely be true, but focusing on those as if leadership is bound up in those rather than focusing on people and what they need. And when that happens, really chaos follows, and you end up slowing down.
As you were talking, I kept on coming back to this question of like the differences between leadership and management. And like you're talking about, but let's put a stake in that for a second, because I do want to come up on some of the things that you said in the last piece was
leaders or new leaders tend to have a very kind of like me and them kind of approach uh, to it. And at that same time, like when you're struggling with it, they're placing the emphasis on the outside of either how they're receiving it. And I can tell you from my experience as well, I had a director on my team who I think she had eight direct reports. And during the time when it came for evaluation, she reported them all as underperforming. And I had to ask her, I was like, well, what does that make you? And it's, like it's one of those things like, hey, is there a disconnect? Is the team like, how do you go about it? But at the same time, it is that when you see new leaders in positions, it can lead to that sort of like, track of putting an emphasis on the outside.
Had a conversation with one of my leaders this morning who I got all these phone calls from people and messages just with frustration with how something went. And I reached out to the person. I said, well, how do you think the calls have been going that you've been on? And it was the same thing. I was like, man, they've been really frustrating. I don't know what to do. People aren't coming along. And so we should probably have a conversation around that. And the questions that I ask for things like, well, do you know why they're resistant? Do you know what the frustration is? Do you understand their perspective, the emotions that they're having? And everybody tries to answer that. And then I'll ask the question, can you go put it in the words that they're going to use when I ask them that question? And then people fumble. And I said, look, I will go check you. I'm going to ask the same question that I asked you. Is it going to match? Is it going to be the same verbiage and the same words? Can you spit that back? And inevitably, the question 9 times out of 10 is no. And then I say, well, then you actually don't know them and you haven't listened to them enough because you don't understand them. No wonder there's a gap. I mean, if this is a person who does not want to work with you, um, they either don't want to work or you're the issue. And if they don't want to work, it's going to show up in a lot of areas of their life. It's not just show up in that situation. Um, yeah, I see it all over the place. And new leaders come into this environment where the tools that they used to be successful for aren't successful. They're in this incredibly uncomfortable space of trying to figure that out. And what they do is they rely on themselves. Like, I'm in this role, I have to rely on me. And they would just be much better to slow down and take a position of humility and say, hey, team, hey, people around me, can you help me come along? And almost 100% of the time, they will. And they'll forgive mistakes. Um, but it does take someone requiring them to have that humility to say, hey, leadership is not about me and my position and being above people. It's about me being able to support people. And in order to be able to do that, I have to ask and have to be willing to just be one of the team. And the farther that gap is, again, we just see problems all over with that.
100%. All right. So I do want to ask you the question of how you see the difference between leadership and management.
Yeah, management is getting things done. It's organizing people to be efficient, to have quality results, and it's all about the tasks. Um, but leadership comes certainly with vision, and that can be your own vision, like depending on the situation, like and where you may be at in an organization or what situation you're in. Um, but all of a sudden, leadership is about not getting things done, but helping people to feel the same way or see the same way or approach things. Um, I always use the example of Martin Luther King, and I usually ask people a very specific question. I'll say, what did Martin Luther King do in the civil rights movement? And they'll give me a bunch of garbage answers. And I go, no, no. The answer to that question is very little. And they're shocked. Like, you say Martin Luther King didn't do a whole lot. I'm like, no. I asked, what did he do in the civil rights movement, not for the civil rights movement? What he did in the civil rights movement was much smaller. He was one person in a million man march. He could only be in one area at a time while people were advocating for change in another area. He could spread himself thin. What he did amazingly well and what he did for the civil rights movement, you can't even write enough books on it. But what he did was he mobilized people to see things the same way, to feel about them the same way, to feel like there's a problem here. We have to do something about it, and to just go off and do it. And because they saw things the same way, they felt about it. They had the same paradigm they were working in. You could have someone in Alabama and someone in Georgia and someone in another state actually doing things that were contributing to the same good because they were all aligned. That's leadership. If he was just doing management, it would be, hey, look, I understand you got some problems there in Georgia, but I'm in Alabama right now. You're gonna have to wait until I show up, or you're gonna have to run everything by me. That would have slowed progress down. We wouldn't have seen the significant amount of change that we did. You know, his approach in that whole movement is that's leadership. That in where we can do community leadership and rallying people together, it always comes because we help them see it, we help them feel the same way, we help them see the same problem, we become emotionally motivated to go solve the same thing. And sure, we can use emotions as a word when it comes to civil rights movement, and that's appropriate and the right thing. But we're all sort of emotional people, even if we're, you know, don't make decisions by our emotions. And it really doesn't change when you come even into a professional environment. And if you want to test that out, just discount someone and go follow them home at night to the bar or wherever they're going to go complain about you. And you find out that they are quite emotional and, you know, they want to be involved in those things. But leadership is really setting that vision and direction and empowering people to be part of it, not having to control everything. Managers control things. I have managers who are on my teams. The expectation of them is to control things and make sure it's done consistently and done right. But even them, if they don't do that in a way that inspires people, leads to a certain amount of trouble. It's just as you move up in an organization, that level of leadership and the ability to rally people around something becomes more and more important.
I would kind of want to call it a pendulum then, right? Like as you move up in the organization, leadership skills become more pronounced because the ability to manage off the scale and scope of what you're talking about is less. So
I say you can't control everything. You get an organization of 300 people under you, you can't know everybody. You can't control all of it. I hear people say things to me like, I want to move into people leadership. I'm like, that's great. Why? Well, about 50% of them, I might be generous there, will say things like, well, I want to be able to make a difference. I want to be able to get things done. I want a certain amount of authority to be able to make changes. And they get shocked when I look at them. I say, you probably aren't cut out for people leadership. I'm like, why? I said, because you just made it all about you. When if you're a leader, you're trying to help people move a direction, you're empowering them. It's about them. And they'll say things like, well, that's easy for you to say. Like, you can get things done. I'm like, really? Like, yeah, you have positional authority because, you've got a title of director. And I usually ask them a question and I say, okay, great. I pull rank on you this afternoon and you don't agree with something and I tell you to do it. What are you going to do when you get home? You're going to irritate me. Yeah, I'm going to be pretty angry. And I say, so you think that authority is going to be able to get you something? You think position is what's required for you. And then if I use mine, you're going to be angry with me? And the higher you go up in an organization, the more you're dealing with other people who have had that same level of success. They've done the things that you've done. And now you're going to go tell your peers who you're responsible for leading an organization or business with how to do things. It doesn't work well. The level of influence and level of inspiration goes up dramatically as you move up in an organization. And despite everybody seeing it as a hierarchy, your level of power and being able to use that actually goes down. And people become more frustrated by that. You have less permission to use it. It's an interesting dynamic that, it's upside down from what people think of until you're in the role and you're faced with what's required to be successful.
How does your leadership philosophy hold out for like decision making, or how does it influence that in the organization as well?
It's putting people in a ring. I'm in a position right now where I switched roles from more of a product management, business development role to managing project management excellence of all things. The challenge that I liked in there is there are 300 project managers and 23 managers. And then, that level goes up. And then there's all the people in the organization who have to move along. And we've got to get everybody sitting in the same room. And things have been just moving apart steadily before I joined the team. And I go in there and I say, well, we can all operate together. And I had two senior vice presidents in my intro call say, good luck, but you must be successful. And I was like, well, that's an interesting combination. And we can, but I've gone around to those 23 leaders and I've been meeting with them. And I've had one message. You have a lot of insights. You're doing the work. You're passionate about it, or you wouldn't be doing the job. And so we're going to go sit in a room together. 23 leaders are going to sit in one room together and one call. And we're going to do it every single month. And we're going to listen to one another and we're going to work together on it. I told some people on my team we were going to do that. And they're like, you're never going to get anything done. I go talk to the people who are actually going to do it. And 100% of them said, I am so thankful. I'm so glad that things are going to change. I'm really looking forward to it. I feel hope for the first time. I had someone reach out to me in my first email that I sent. And, it was positive email. Like, you're a new leader. You're supposed to send things out. Here's where we're going to go. Her response back to me said, I've been hearing that same thing for 10 years. I'm frankly tired of hearing it. Good luck. Like, huh, well, that's a challenge. So I called her and I said, well, that deserves a meeting. And by the end of that meeting, having that conversation that says, well, you're experiencing that because we're not having conversations together. We've lost the human part of connection to do things is the problem. We're going to sit in a room. By the end of that, she says, for the first time in a decade, I feel hopeful. And yeah, that's a massive win. But again, it comes because we focus on people. We don't focus on the task and results. And we have big results that we have to achieve. We have big changes we need to make. There's a lot of frustration. Focusing on those changes is never going to get it. Focusing on the people, getting them to have relationships and trust one another, creating a safe space to say, hey, what we're doing clearly isn't working. So we're just going to do something different. And I had a conversation with one of the people reporting to me who just thought, well, we've got to do it perfect. And I said that just your goal by the end of next week, I want you to go mess something up. I want you to go do this and simply make a mistake. Comes back, it was actually pretty good. And I said, what was the moral of the story? The moral of the story is go take action, create a safe space where you and other people can go try something and fail. And when we do that, we'll build trust and confidence. People will participate more and we'll get some pretty exceptional results. Don't focus on people. We aren't going to get them.
I love that. You're giving a lot of great insights here as far as like what leadership is and how you can execute upon it. It is really like finding the space where you can open doors of communication, where you can allow a space for change, where you can create that safe space of like, hey, we're going to fuck this up. And at the same time, we're going to learn from it. And then we're going to come back and we're going to do it better. And so allowing those, virtues to come through can be really helpful. Now, how do you see, the advancements of AI coming into your organization or into like how leadership is expressed?
Yeah, I love it. I obviously leadership is a people thing. I mean, that's probably come through loud and clear, but we spend a lot of time in any organization focusing on tasks and focusing on repetitive things. It's not what moves an organization forward. Me writing an email, making meeting minutes, deciphering things that have come out of journals or articles, or like, that doesn't necessarily move a business forward. You can have amazing knowledge. You can have the best dashboards and reports in the world. It can be just amazing. If people aren't rallied around those, you get nowhere. So the more that you can alleviate all of that manual work, all that effort, and free it up to say, look, we're freeing this time up, free to do things that are a lot more meaningful for relationships, for us to work together, that's invaluable. You free up just a measly 10% of time, just small amount per week, and you set the expectation that that time is going to be used in a specific way, and it's going to be used in terms of relationships. Like, this is not your extra free time to do whatever. We're going to replace it with this. You get pretty dramatic results around it. And what I love about AI is it actually can help deliver that. And certainly it can help you get better results. Before the podcast, you and I were talking about, someone on my team who what they do to the English language is a crime. And I was just like, look, just put it in there and have it spit it back. It'll be much better. It will help with that. But to me, the biggest area is like we can just automate things that are not important. They're not valuable, to free it up for other things. Or also the fact that people are expensive if you have to pay them. And I don't enjoy paying highly paid people who are professionals a lot of money to do things they don't have to do. It's just a waste of money and a waste of resources. And AI, it is starting to solve a lot of that, and it has the potential to do a tremendous amount to solve that. So while a lot of people are questioning what AI is going to do, or is it going to deliver what it promised, or some people are nervous and scared about it, I'm pretty excited and hopeful about it, because I think it actually is the path to sort of the next level of growth that we're going to have, powered by people and relationships, rather than just tasks. And what are you going to do when you're no longer focused on all these remedial tasks that today so many people pride themselves on? Like, wow, I'm a great this, and it's like, but AI can do that. I can do this amazing. Yeah, AI can do that. You're going to have to pride yourself on something else, and those things you're going to have to pride yourself on, I think, are much more valuable. And so AI delivers promise, but it's going to force change that I think will be really exciting.
I love the points that you hit on, because I think what we're finding is AI can't do relationships.
Right.
It can mimic it, but at the same time, it really isn't effective at putting it through. I was on a call with a gentleman the other day, and he's doing a lot of work in voice AI and like real time kind of space. And we talk about context windows of LLMs. Well, the audio context window right now is about 10 minutes before the AI starts to forget about what you're talking about. Now, there's other things that you can do to extend that, but at the same time, you don't have that shared kind of like space that you're experiencing with it. You don't have the, I had a conversation with Todd 2 months ago kind of thing, and now I'm having one with him today. And, we have that shared. It's basically like working with somebody with, dementia or no short-term or no long-term memory. The other area that we find that we are not looking to implement AI is in strategy, and also then creativity. And so creative pursuits are the things that when we talk to companies or we talk to individuals in their roles, and what do they like to be doing? What is it that is that creative expression, or where do they see them playing in the strategic side of things? We look at like, all right, we're not going to be touching that. And it is one of those areas of like, hey, even if AI comes along and gives every promise that it's ever made, we're still going to want to hang out with people.
Yeah, hopefully. Right. Yeah. Are you finding, in your conversations that the motivation for organizations who want to implement AI is sort of tracing back to what we can do, and freeing people up for that more valuable work that comes from interaction. Or you find that organizations are still having a very technical conversation about results and about automation and those sort of things, and not what they're going to do once they have those things in place.
And I've seen this with a number of change management projects through like the years, right? Like the dictate comes down from executives of like, here's what we're doing and here's the results that it's going to produce. And then even in the financial models, you see that like headcount reduction is part of it. But then when you get to operations and you actually go and implement what you're doing, operations has a list of like 3 different roles that this person could be doing once they're done, and they move them into those roles. So I've been fortunate that I've never been part of a change management project, even with like Fortune 50 companies, that has resulted in, headcount reduction. What we're seeing with AI is somewhat similar, where they want their people, and also we are targeting relationship businesses. So we're targeting financial services firms, we're targeting insurance companies. Like we're looking for these places where the relationship is important. So they're trying to identify like, how can we get our people so that they can serve our customers better, have less overhead, and automate away the things that keep them away from working with the client, and allow them to focus on the strategy and that relationship side of it.
Yeah. See, that's more exciting.
Exactly. And that's why I wanted to go after those customers, because it was like, you know what, if I'm going to implement AI, and we are, right? That's the main purpose of why people come to us today, is for that enablement. We want to work with people who are actually focused on that relationship.
Yeah, it's interesting to me, in product development, I would talk to people, and inevitably my team and my organization would be very technology focused. And AI is cool if you're a nerd, right? We're like, oh, I love this stuff and it's exciting. And you can sit with those people and you can talk. But that's not what's exciting to most people outside of our circles. They sort of, their eyes glaze over and they go, LLM, what is that? Yeah. And then you go beyond that and it's just speaking another language. And I think about going and selling the services that we offer to organizations. And I talk to sales and they can't talk technical. They really have no idea what that is. But what are the conversations they're having? They're very real conversations of, here's the problems that you're experiencing. Here's the irritation and frustration that you're having or your people are having with that. Here's the value that you're trying to deliver. And that's what we're trying to solve. And we can understand that and have those conversations back. We can sell more, we can deliver better services, we can design better products. But it does take that understanding. And that to me is the exciting thing. Like you talk about organizations like that who are going after relationships with people and serving the customer, and it comes out in real ways. That's what technology can facilitate. It's just oftentimes we like technology in our circles and we just get wrapped up in that and we're extremely knowledgeable about it. But it goes back to that understanding people and their motivations and what they feel about things and those very human things. That marries very well with the technology, and that actually convinces people that that technology that we are nerding out over is actually really worth having a conversation about. And they can have a conversation with that even if they don't know the technical depths that we do. And I find people who will say, I'm not a fan of technology, I don't care. It's not actually true. They care about what technology can do. And if you start having a conversation about that, they'll entertain a long conversation with you, and they don't think they're talking about technology, but you can weave it in and they'll be excited about engaged. Most people, it's an interesting phenomenon.
Most people have, a problem that they're trying to solve, right? And like if you can show how technology can help them solve that problem, fantastic. I learned sales from one gentleman. I was in the vending machine market, and we were doing an ERP platform in that space. So highly specialized kind of thing. And, we had something, I think it was like a 45% market share. And our main competitor had around a 45% market share. Well, that, 90% of the market was actually determined by one man who had first worked for our company. And then he would go out to, he built up that one company, and then he left to go join the other one and built up that company. And when I talked to him, his son actually came to work for me. And so we were, got to know each other. And I was like, what's the secret? He goes, I listen. He's like, I'm not selling tech. I'm selling solutions to people's problems. So I listen to what their problems are, and then I find how my solution can help them with that. And then that makes it so much easier because you're collaborating at that point. So yeah, absolutely brilliant.
I interviewed with a company who will remain unnamed because they're one of our competitors, and I don't want to promote them, obviously. But in the interview, one of the things that they said always stuck out to me. They said, we show up in a sales call and we do not have PowerPoints and we don't have paper and we have nothing. We sit there and we have a conversation and we ask questions and listen. And inevitably, those customers will say things to them like, we've never had a sales call like this before. But they start with really understanding. They start with hearing what their problems are, and then they offer solutions to them. Yeah, so it's very exciting. I think you see something like that, and the significant percentage of the market that person manages just by listening. And the human connection is really powerful. It's massive results.
It's amazing. And I will say it's been really nice to talk to you today because the conversation has walked me through my history of like being a young leader and then like growing and seeing the challenges and the pain points and coming from like a highly technical space into, that growth. So it's been nice to connect. And Todd, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time today to be on with us.
Yeah, it's been fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Not a problem.